Okay, so the homework 5, what I asked you to do is add .json to the URLs and have the response return JSON. So you can see here we've got the JSON response for that first entry. Content and created, it's got our date and last modified and subject. It's got the text in there. And if we were to go to a permalink for a particular blog entry and add JSON to that, we'd see JSON for that one entry. So let's take a look at the code that makes all this work. Here we are in our code. We're in the URL handler portion of things. I've changed our two URL handlers for blog to look for .json at the end of the URL. There are a couple ways of doing this, of checking to see, you could have made special handlers for JSON URLs. That's fine. I chose to do it this way. And this is just some regular expression syntax to basically, the parentheses say, look for this group of things, but this question mark colon says, and don't send it as a parameter into the handler, like this set of parentheses does, remember, for the permalinks. So this just says match, slash blog slash a number, and optionally it can end in .json. And we did that also on this one. This says match slash blog slash, well, that slash is optional. That's what that question mark does. And then optionally, the string .json. Actually, what this matches is any character JSON. These regular expressions should actually have slashes in them. Probably nobody will notice, and it's a bug that doesn't really hurt anybody. But anyway, there it is, another bug in the wild. Okay, anyway, let's look at the changes to the handlers that I needed to make. Okay, so remember we have blog handler. This is our class that is kind of the superclass for all of our handlers that has all this handy stuff in it. I changed this initialize function, so it's still looking up the users as before, from the previous homework. But now I check to see if the request URL ends with .json, we're going to set on itself the format is JSON. Otherwise, the format is going to be HTML. There are certainly better ways to do this if you had a much more complicated site where every page can be in HTML and JSON. But for our purposes, for this homework, this will work just fine. Then we go into our blog handlers where we're actually outputting the blog, and we need to just check out what the format should be. Another thing I added is on the post object. We've got our render function, which returns the post in HTML. This is what we had before, using the templates. We don't need templates for JSON. What I do here is instead I create a dictionary representation of the post itself. This is a format string, this variable here, %c, which basically says print the date nicely in whatever locale you're in. And we use that down here for the created and last modified fields in this dictionary. So created equals self.created.stirf time, and then that time format string. You could put in lots of different format strings to make this date print out however you like. I just use %c, that's quick. And then of course we include the subject and the content in this dictionary. Now, why do we convert it to a dictionary? Because the JSON library in Python expects data types that it knows how to convert into JSON, which are lists, dictionaries, integers, floats, strings, that sort of thing. It doesn't actually, the JSON library in Python doesn't know what a post object is. It doesn't know how to convert that to JSON. So we create a dictionary representation of our object first, and then we can pass that into JSON later. So if we come down here to the front page of our blog handler, where we look up all of the posts, I have a function now called getPosts, which does some fancy things to prevent you guys from filling my blog with spam. I'm going to try to avoid showing you that code. This used to be the SQL query. Here we check to see, if the format's HTML, we call the front page template. This is old code. Otherwise, we assume it's JSON. This could probably be else if to be safe. We're going to call this render JSON function, which is defined above, and I'll show you that in a moment. And basically, what it does is it takes a list of each post, P for P in posts, as a dictionary, calling this asDict function on each post, and then we'll render JSON. Here we are in the permalink handler for a particular blog post. We call that post page. This takes a parameter called post ID that comes in from the URL. We saw this in the previous homework. We just look up the post. If the post isn't there, we 404. If it's format, basically else, if it's format HTML, use the HTML template. Otherwise, call self.renderJSON that post as a dictionary. So simple enough. The only function we haven't talked about yet is render JSON, and let's go find that. That's up above. Here we are in our blog handler again. One function I forgot to point out, I added. So we've got our write and our render stir, and our render function, which is for rendering a template, or for sending a template over the wire. I also added a render JSON. And what this does is this takes a D, which is, I meant to kind of refer to dictionary, but in fact, actually in this case, sometimes a dictionary, sometimes a list. It could be anything that is valid JSON. We use the JSON library in Python. We just imported that with import JSON. And we get the JSON representation of this Python data structure by calling dumps. You did this in some of the quiz problems. And then we set the content type to application JSON. And then we write our JSON text. And that's it. That's the homework. So not actually a whole lot of code, but a lot of little things you needed to figure out. And I kind of realized after doing the solutions for homework 3 and 4 that maybe you needed a more straightforward one. So there you go. Now your blog supports HTML, and other people can download JSON versions of your blog if they want to write little tools on top of it, which would be pretty cool. Good job, and we'll see you next week.